fearless, provocative,
straight talking. We will say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Heartfelt and passionate.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Fearless and truthful.
Welcome to The Pledge, the programme committed to passionate and fearless debate. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank my husband, Barack Obama. Oops, sorry, wrong speech. More on Melania Trump later. Also on the programme, and all original scripts, I promise, Nick claims he's happy about something for a change. Michelle Mone is not lured by Pikachus and Squirtles. Michelle Dewberry has a few things to say about pressing the button. And Rachel is anxious. Aren't we all? Now, if a woman revealed she was becoming a mother at 72, the world would recoil in horror, disgusted and, of course, intrigued how that was even medically possible. But when a man makes the same announcement, a few wry smiles and some light-hearted jokes about him being a dirty dog. Cue onto the public stage a gyrating Mick Jagger, who at the grand age of 72 is expecting his 8th child with 29-year-old American ballerina Melanie Hamrick. And 3 years his junior, Ronnie Wood, at 69 last month, he had twins with his third wife, Sally Humphreys, who's the ripe old age of 38. OK, guys, well done for proving your virility again. But this just exposes how we still hold women to different standards to men. There can be health risks for the babies of older fathers, but more than that, it reinforces the notion that children are a woman's responsibility. Oh, it's OK that the father's probably only got 10 good years left in him because the woman will pick up the pieces and look after the child forevermore. Mick and Ronnie, it's time you both heeded the words of your own song. You can't, or at least you shouldn't, always get what you want.
This is an interesting one for me. I'm 36 and I don't feel ready for children, not least because I haven't got a partner yet, but I feel massively under pressure because of my biological clock. Whether I'm ready or not is kind of irrelevant because my body is going to dictate to me when I have children. Mm-hmm. And that frustrates me because there's very little I can do about it. When I see these older guys having these kids with these very much younger girls, first of all, I think it's a bit sad, really. I look at these young, beautiful girls having these kids with these ageing guys.
Maybe they're happy.
And yeah, but I just look at that and I just think...
Maybe they're happy.
I just look at that and I think,
oh, so you're
hang on
judgment.
a second.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
I'm judging them.
Yeah, so
I
you
look
know
at
better
them,
than them.
I look at them and I just think, what is attracting you to
Wait
this?
a minute,
but
please.
The reason that the guys are having these children in their 60s and their 70s is because they can. They biologically can.
So you're jealous?
No, I think it's
No,
because...
I'm not jealous. I just
of
think
older men, I mean, their capacity not to have that pressure.
I think they're having them because the women want them to them. I think the women are the ones who are driving this.
Yeah.
The men are just rolling over and thinking, OK, well, you know, I'll give her what she wants. I
agree with you. I mean, Mick Jagger's not going to sit there and they're going to go up to him and say, oh, I want a child. He's probably thinking, I want to run for the hills.
He's a great
He wants to run for the hills.
grandfather.
It's the women who want the children.
But it takes
and
two
you
to
can't
tango.
compare women to men because men don't have the menopause. So men
they
can
don't have
keep
the
going on
biological
until they're 100.
But hang on a minute.
Yeah.
It doesn't, can I just build on a point that I raised in the intro, which is that actually there are growing numbers of journals, but shock horror, they've not done a lot of medical research on this, which show the risks, the actual biological risks to children born to older dads. There is a significant increased risk of certain cancers, schizophrenia and birth defects. Women carry around this chalice of guilt if they think they're going to, in any way, by having a child later, harm that child. Yes, it may be the women driving it, but men can put on a condom. Stop themselves from having children.
But what we're talking about is these great granddads, these ageing rockers, giving their wives and girlfriends the children that I think the wives and girlfriends desperately want.
Yeah.
And also, as I wrote in my Mail on Sunday column last week, these aren't any old common and garden babies these women are having. They're having Ronnie Wood's baby. They're having Mick Jagger's baby. Of course the men are going to give them children. It's like the wife is killing two birds with one stone. Possibly. She's getting a baby, a Jagger baby, and she's getting her pension sorted. I mean, you really think that Mick Jagger wanted this to happen, or Melanie Hamrick?
Hold on a second. Maybe, just maybe, the women are doing it because they love the respective blokes. They don't see it as the cash cow that you're suggesting.
No.
And you actually started this conversation with the words, if a woman. Why do you have to see everything through the prism of that?
Because
why can you?
I thought you said I could.
There was extraordinary.
Go on, let Nick.
There's no bloody point. There's no bloody point.
But she is right that we can't even get our heads around the idea of a 72-year-old woman having.
Yeah.
We can't get our heads around the idea of a 72-year-old woman having a great grandchild, can we?
Let me answer your question if I interrupted you. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you. I thought you asked a question. It's usually got a question mark at the end of it. If you ask me why I see everything from the point of view of a woman, it's because up until about 30 or 40 years ago, you wouldn't have never seen a site like this, a television programme with the views of women coming through and through and through. We've had a situation where we haven't heard from women for most of our lives throughout all the generations. So forgive me for having that vantage point.
But what I find really, really unpalatable from most of the panel, with the exception of Michelle, who I think's nailed it, which is this all comes down to the menopause, and try as you will, there's nothing medically that you can do yet, although there's been stories around some kind of...
No, there has been stories this week.
Hold on. What is unpalatable is the sentiment that's coming from here, which I think is downright wrong, that these women are doing it purely for cash reasons. There has been that suggestion, and that is simply wrong. Why couldn't a 20...
Who said that?
You described... Well, let's not keep going over it, Rach, because I don't think it's a particularly clever thing.
She has a Jagger baby, which is what she wanted, and she sorted out her pension.
No, maybe a 29-year-old woman can love a 72-year-old bloke. I actually don't know the ages.
I'm not saying she doesn't.
But she's also a successful ballerina and isn't moving and is living in New York. Let's put that to one side for the moment. Do you accept at least, Nick, do you accept that it reinforces the notion that the father is slightly redundant if he's only probably got 15 years left on the earth?
For goodness sake. We're talking about Rolling Stones here.
I see your point, right, but I think each their own, and I don't think you should sit there and judge because, you know, they're not sitting judging you and what you're up to, and I'm sure you don't live in a perfect world. No, I know that, but it's whatever goes on in their lives is up to them. Do I think it's right? I don't think I would have a baby at 72.
Michelle, point of information on this topic. Madame Hamrick, or Mademoiselle Hamrick, and Mr Jagger are not even going to be living on the same continent. So Emma has a point that this is a baby for her. It's not going to be a shared child,
Rachel,
is it?
He's a Rolling Stones.
I know, I've said that myself.
Story. I must get home for bath
Emma
night.
has a point, which is that this is going to be Melanie Hamrick's baby. Nick Jagger has fathered it and will pay for it. Yes. Is that what we call parenting?
What, parenting? Oh, so you're now going to give us the guide to parenting, are you?
No, but what it does do is underscore the fact that the man is a sperm donor in this case. He's not an actual father, particularly.
Why will you not allow that perhaps they genuinely like each other?
I'm not saying
but
they
you keep coming back to this point.
But I think it's actually...
I don't agree with it, but it's better than a live together and share the baby.
It's better than a drug user bringing a baby into the world, isn't it?
Okay.
So what I'm saying is they've got the money... They're happy, they're in love. I know he's older, but each to their own.
Come on, 8 kids as well. He's not heard. He obviously hasn't.
He's a great-grandfather, and this woman wasn't even born when any of his hits were out. I mean, I know I'm getting old when I'm older than one of Mick Jagger's women. You know, I really made it, but that's a separate point.
Maybe if you're a great-granddad, you should put a...
But he is Mick Jagger,
you should put a note in it.
Yeah. He's not just any old great-granddad, is he? He's not like a chopped floor fitter.
For me, the point remains it's a really simple one. It's just guys have kids older because they can. If I could have... if I'm not ready for children aged 36...
Do you want Mick Jagger's number? Is this what I'm hearing from you?
No, I absolutely don't. But my point is, the point remains that the reason that we've got this massive disconnect between people over here in their 70s having kids and women over here unable to or not doing so is because we can't. It's a biological restriction.
But I think you should stop worrying about everyone else and just worry about yourself.
I was trying to draw out this bigger message that it sends, which is, to be honest, I don't really care, because you're right, it's different in the sense of it's a rolling stone. But what I think it sends is the message that men can just do this and then women literally pick up the baby. And men are seen as strong for their fecundity.
The word is baby father, isn't it? You know, you're just the father of the child.
You think they're being forced to give birth against their will, these two women?
I'm not saying they're being forced, but it's a reinforced narrative of a patriarchal society.
But Emma, it's her choice. She's the one that's got herself...
Or a matriarchal society, where the women get what they want and they have to take care of the baby when they get it.
I like that spin. It's more positive, Rachel. You've cheered me up.
It's her choice. She wanted to get herself pregnant.
I'm not denying that.
You can... She's a grown woman. You can prevent things from happening. So she's probably both planned it, or maybe she's planned it.
I love the fact they declared themselves surprised by the news, as if they didn't know how it had happened.
Well, whatever we have learnt from that debate, we move on. Because they've been hailed as the finest tool for social mobility ever invented. They've also been described as the best thing to come out of Britain since the Beatles. They've been copied around the world with huge success. They've provided prime ministers, chancellors, captains of industry, and a raft of groundbreaking entrepreneurs. For those of you who still don't know what I'm talking about, let me educate you. They are grammar schools. And in one of the best pieces of news since Roy Hodgson quit, it is being quietly suggested Theresa May is looking at bringing them back. Hooray! Because grammars are great.
I'm very torn on this, because I think in an ideal world we would live in a situation where the standard of all schools was brought up. Yeah. Because I think that your education is the biggest gift that you can receive.
And your parents.
From your parents, if they can do that for you and live in an area. But right now, the question is, sadly, do we sort children by neighbourhood or do we sort them by ability? And grammar schools, there's a certain amount of myth around why they and how they were so brilliant. I mean, and that's been discussed in the media. And people of a certain age look back at them with extreme fondness. And yet they're ruthlessly unfair in some ways, because you don't make sure at the same time, or it certainly doesn't seem to be happening, that the standard of all schools are being brought up. But you can't, and it's very hard to argue, I think, against the idea that just because you live in a poor neighbourhood and you yourself are without means as a family, but you're super smart, that you couldn't be given the opportunity to go to a fantastic school. So I find myself wanting something that seems to be quite impossible to be the case, that everything is lifted, and yet at the same time seeing the merit of grammar schools.
So can we say that we're half in accord for once in a long, long time? You are right. You are right. The thing where I believe they went wrong last time was the provision for the children who didn't attain what used to be known as an 11+, who didn't, and so they were sheep and goats or whatever they might be. And the failure of the idea was that in those days they were called secondary modern schools or whatever they were. They simply didn't cater for the child. Along with grammar schools, I would have a massive revolution, because if a child, say a child wants to be a beautician or a lad wants to be a plumber, what is the point of teaching him the rivers of the world or maths where he has no interest at all? Let's borrow an idea from Germany, where they have colleges and gymnasiums, as they're called, and a kid who wants to be a plumber, then from the age of about 11, we are teaching him or her to be a plumber, and then they go off and be a plumber. And the other kids who want to be prime ministers, they go to the grammars. Surely...
Do kids know what they want to be at 11?
I don't think they want to be... I agree with you, Michelle. They don't know what they want to do when they're 11. I think they all have their dreams and aspirations, but they certainly don't know at the age of 11
Is
what
it
they
fair
want
to
do.
say whatever educational ability you might have, the level of how far you might go is shown by the age 11? I'm not saying that you know that you're going to be an entrepreneur, you know you're going to be a journalist.
I think every child deserves the chance. Every child does. But when you see someone who is standing out against all the other children, and I think it's fair to send them to a better school.
But the support must be for the others.
I think the problem seems to be there are so few grammars currently. There are, a couple of hundred. And, you're going to have to roll out a huge number of them. And, yes, I think you're absolutely right, in consort with technical education, which I think is also coming downstream. A previous member of the government, Nick Boles, went off to Norway, and now that's coming in. And I think that there's going to be this idea that at 16 you can diverge and you can go into a technical pathway, and that's going to be brilliant, because we need more trained people and apprentices and all the rest of it. But I think that if you have a lot of these grammar schools, I think the evidence has been that, as with Sure Start or any provision, it is always colonised by the middle classes. So the idea that the underachieving poor white boy is going to actually be brought up very quickly by the, as it were, the allowing of grammar schools again, because at the moment it's illegal to have selective education in the state sector, to create new selective schools.
If you look at the new cabinet, someone such as David Davis, who's now known as the Brexit Minister...
We've got grammar school grafters,
grew up in a council estate and went to a grammar school and has now achieved what he's achieved, I would argue. He's obviously had a damn good parents or parent, whatever the situation, but he had the right education. That's why I said at the start, they can be tremendous tools of social mobility. I don't think they are solely colonised.
But the evidence of the intake in grammar schools is that there is only 3% of free school meals. So basically they are colonised, as I said, by the middle classes. So you've got to get grammar schools which are used by the poorest and the most underachieving sectors.
The good old days.
So they must be put in the areas where there are the least achieving populations.
I think education in this country needs to be picked up and given a massive shake, because I don't think it's massively fit for purpose at the moment. So when I see, and I work with a lot of young kids that have come out of school, and some of the basic stuff that they lack, they just don't seem to have this common sense and this gumption on how to get on in the world. And then I work also with employers who are saying, we just don't have the skills that we need. These kids are not leaving school with the skills. So for me, I think education needs a proper shake-up to look at what are we actually teaching them. And to your point specifically about grammar schools, I remember when I was at school, it was carnage. And what we had in our class, we had a couple of bright kids, academically bright kids, and they were massively held behind by a lot of the other people in our class, because in our class people were messing around. They used to lock supply teachers in cupboards. They used to do all kinds of stuff. And those academic bright kids were absolutely hindered by the shenanigans that was going on in our classroom.
But that doesn't work for either kid, does it?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So to pluck that talent out and actually nurture it separately, if that's what your talent is academically, then I'm not necessarily against that.
And this gives people the chance who don't have that financial,
clout.
Clout. And I was brought up in a working class background, and I would have loved the opportunity.
You went to a state school?
Yeah, I did, and I was from the East End of Glasgow, and I think it's fantastic if we pick out the kids, the bright kids, and give them a chance, because their parents don't have the financial means to send them to schools.
The thing I was going to talk about, though, was the process through which we let people into these schools, because actually I remember doing an entrance exam, and then I remember other friends doing entrance exams, and I'm talking about friends of yours went to a grammar. There was a grammar.
What age, Emma? To what
sort
of school?
I was at 8 when I did an entrance exam to a private school, having been at the local comp, and then I was 11 again doing another exam. And
did you get it right at the same time?
Some people perform very well in exams. Others are atrocious. Yeah. And actually, I think if we're going to reintroduce grammar schools and do it properly in the idea of where they should be in the country, you have to have a range of sort of assessments. Because, just hear me out for a moment, because coursework is very, very good at weeding out people who don't on the day
but you still need to do a memory box.
There has to be a mix, because there are horror stories out there about how people went for their 11 plus and couldn't perform.
No, I know. Hay
and
fever, family bereavement.
It changes their entire life. And I think this whole one-stop shop, I'm up for competing, I'm up for getting in there, but I think you've got to have room in the system to allow different people to come through.
I'm really interested. I thought I would be shouted down on this one.
Well, I've got a
thought...
question for you, actually. So I've got an 11...
It's not geography, is it?
I've got an 11 plus question for you.
Oh, no!
So I'd be interested to see whether or not...
Can we any of us do it?
Hang on.
It's reserved initially for Nick.
Right.
So, Nick, select the option which has the sentence with the most suitable grammar. So there's your choices, and I want to know which one you think is the right one.
I'm trying... Oh, it's gone! It's gone. Was it he who had... No, it's not that. Was it he whose house burnt down? I don't... Was he whose house burnt down? I am going to... Was it he? No, because that would be he who had... I'm going to go for 2.
You're going to go for 2. Let's
B.
show us the correct answer. The correct answer is indeed...
There we go.
That one.
And I didn't go to grammar.
Well done.
I did go to private.
Well done. Well done.
Yes, and so I'm staggered by the amount of... Because this, if you think about it, and you were right, people hark back to a certain gold age, it does sort of belong in the 50s and the 60s, but I think it can be retooled, and it can really, really work in the future.
It's a good thing. We don't want, and we haven't got government run by private school poshos, and the cabinet now looks very much like this table around the pledge, doesn't it? You know, a very good thing.
It's great.
Yeah, a mixture of different educations and beautiful blonde women.
Well, we all learned something there.
No, I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the others.
Lessons over, Michelle.
OK, guys, it's like a zombie movie out there. Have you seen them all? Apparently, they're all playing Pokemon Go. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for encouraging couch potatoes to get up, go outside and get active. But it seems the potatoes jumping off the couch and into the fire. This is all getting ridiculous. Just look at this from America.
In Sarasota, 84 in St. Pete right now. Got a Pokemon? She's looking for Pokemon right now. This is the location. You guys got to be careful with these phones. It's Pokemon. You're just walking around all over the place.
But it's not all fun. Far from it. Guess what the driver was doing in the car when he crashed in upstate New York? That's right, playing Pokemon Go. There have also been reports of children being shot at, mugged at knife point and arrested for trespassing. Greater Manchester Police have even issued a warning about paedophiles targeting children through Pokemon. As a parent, I'm extremely worried about this game. I think it's dangerous and irresponsible. With reports coming in that a teenager has been killed in Central America, what will it take for the developers to take safety concerns more seriously?
As a mother,
right,
my daughter's already started to play Pokemon Go, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant development. I can't see anything wrong with it. It's a sort of genius concept, we have to admit. Don't forget, we were all hunter-gatherers. Mm-hmm. And so now they've combined our hunter-gathering instincts with our obsession with our smartphones. I mean, Nintendo is laughing all the way to the bank here, isn't he? Because we're all addicted to our smartphones. We love... I mean, it's like Top Trumps or something, but you can capture them and then train them. And so it's a completely brilliant concept. And, as you say, it burns off 1,500 calories or whatever it is if you're starting to play it a week or a day, who knows. I can't see the problem. It's a craze.
I think it is fantastic. I'm not disagreeing with you there.
With me.
I agree with you. But I think that something is going to happen.
There's a risk
because
in
kids
everything.
are running to catch them. They could be running over a railway track or something. I just think that the safety concerns...
And they will.
That's what I worry about.
You could have said that about roller skates. You could have said that about skateboards. You could have said anything. Look, that picture that you showed up in... was it upstate New York where the driver... That's tragic. That's tragic that happened to that driver. But you could have said that if he'd been on his mobile phone, if he'd been swapping a CD in his CD player.
Do you remember that Segway user who went over a cliff?
Yeah, you can't blame Pokemon Go for stupidity.
But we're getting into the virtual as well, where I think it's Samsung are bringing out goggles, and it feels as if you are, walking off a cliff and all the rest of it.
The problem is, I think we're going to...
I've done it. I've put on a headset, a virtual reality headset. I used to cover technology, so I still sometimes go to these conferences which are filled with amazing inventions. And I love the feeling of it. And for me, I think this is classic example of how you're blaming societal ills or stupidity on developers, which is not what we should be doing here. And actually, I've been looking at your social media accounts, Michelle, if you don't mind, before we've come on, and you are quite a fan of the selfie, it can be said. You're there smiling with whatever you're doing that day. Selfies have changed the way we behave as a society in the sense of technology comes along all the time and is behaviour changing.
But
it's really weird. No, but hang on, literally 5 years ago, if you'd stopped where you were in the middle of the street and gone in your phone, people would have been like, what is she doing? But now, if you don't photograph something, it's like it never happened.
But the NSPCC have written to the developers because they're really concerned about children's safety. And I do believe that it's fun. I'm not having a go at the developers, but I think that they need to... more safety elements
let me just interrupt, because we have
a
brilliant way of illustrating that point, because I don't know about you, but in times of conflict I always like to turn to The Simpsons for guidance. And here we're going to see that the danger is that the player becomes unaware of his or her surroundings, and this is what happens to Homer.
Mankey, Diglett, Grimer.
Hey, Dad, check
out here! Dad, a mother giraffe is giving birth! Dad, look, I'm walking on the wall around the lion pit! Dad, the baby giraffe is taking his first steps! Dad, I'm walking on my hands and the lions think they're gonna eat me!
Will you kids pipe down? Ratata, Sandshrew, Drowsy.
Dad, pay attention to your children!
Okay. Uh-oh.
Won't somebody think of the children? I mean, Emma, bringing you on with your technological hat or helmet or whatever it was that you're wearing, Michelle, although I do say it's a bit like skateboard, there is something that probably the manufacturers need to take on board here.
No, there's not at all. You know, I grew up playing Game Boy, the first iteration of Nintendo, wandering around as well, even though I wasn't needing to walk, playing whatever I was playing.
They're going to catch these Pokemons. They could be running across the road to catch it. That's very dangerous.
It
really is. What's it going to take? Kids to be killed for the developers to realise?
Be careful when you're outside.
Yeah. This is very simple to me. So you called it a craze and you called this dangerous and irresponsible. To me, this is the future. This is augmented reality. This is where we're moving towards, and this is what we're going to be seeing more and more of. And what needs to happen is personal responsibility. If you want to play a game...
I just say personal responsibility to an 8-year-old who's running across the road to catch a Pokemon.
I'll answer that. So you teach an 8-year-old child to look before... Well, you teach a child, I'm sure before the age of 8, to look left and right before you cross the road, full stop. So it's the way you're bringing up your children, a child, an adult, anyone... You have to take responsibility for yourself. You wouldn't just step in front of a lorry or a bus or a car, and you shouldn't just because all of a sudden you're playing a game. You can't blame. Pokemon Go, what Pokemon Go is, it's a fantastic success story. It is changing so much of the way that we interact. There's so many businesses that are prospering as a result of this. People are being entrepreneurial. When you've got a Pokestop or whatever it's called, and you've got, I don't know, it's at a local cafe, these cafe owners are really getting business. They're making more revenue off the back of this. I think this is fantastic. I think it should be celebrated, and I think we should be seeing more of it.
I don't know if we need to celebrate it, but I like the business stuff.
Michelle, I am not saying for 1 minute that it's not a great idea. I'm just saying that we need to all think about how to keep the children safer.
Yeah, but technology can't win because parents, and I'm not yet one, but were for a while going, my child won't get out of the house, they just sit in front of the video games. But what this has done is augment our reality,
but
so you can get out.
Pokemon's, flying across the railway or whatever, or across the road. What I'm saying is the developers need to take a bit more responsibility.
In where they place the Pokemon.
Of course.
Because I think we've seen that there's Pokemon at the Cenotaph.
Or over a highway or something,
Wasn't there a case of... We got some pictures of Pokemon being found in labour wards, or suddenly they've arrived at funerals, and people. There's a sort of great race of people. You had one in your glass of wine.
I found one in my mate's glass of wine because I actually downloaded it for research purposes, obviously, and we put it on. And as soon as I opened it, I don't know if it was just a careful ploy to lure me in, but as soon as we opened it up, there was one sitting on my mate's glass, literally on the glass of wine.
And were you bitten by the bug? Have you got the Pokemon Go bug now?
Well, I did do it on the way down here, and I found another one.
But Michelle, I agree with you. We are in the middle of a global change. We are a movement here. Things are moving on at a pace that none of us would ever expect. But all I'm saying is just think about the safety of the kids. Because if someone, say, kids got... taken away by paedophiles, or they're running... you can't stop that. I know that, unfortunately, but they're running across a highway, a child gets knocked down with a lorry or whatever.
Parks, Michelle. Don't let children go to parks because it's a paedophile.
I'm not a parent, but if I was, I'd be teaching my kid the right and the wrong, and not expecting the games developers to be keeping them safe.
So do you not agree with me that they need to look at where they safety and where they put them and be more responsible?
Isn't it randomly distributed?
But the responsibility should be on the individual playing, and if it's a child, then the parents to be teaching the kid how to be conscious.
But equally,
anyway, panel. I think we need to move on. And I think you need to get ready, because I've got a very serious subject next. This week finally saw the votes on whether or not to renew Trident, and I breathed a huge sigh of relief when I heard that a majority of 355 had voted in favour. Don't get me wrong, like any sane person, I hate nuclear weapons. I've been to Hiroshima, and it was one of the most shocking and moving experiences of my life. reading about and watching the footage of the devastation and seeing the eerie, twisted remains of the exhibition hall is something which will never leave my mind. It brought me to tears then, and it would still do the same now. But sadly, the reality is we still live in a nuclear world. There are over 15,000 nuclear weapons in existence across 9 countries. And while these weapons exist, we are at risk of a devastating attack. And that's why, as much as I wish we could live in a world without nuclear weapons, we can't afford not to have a nuclear defence in these current times.
Michelle, I have to agree with you. It's a necessary evil that we need to have, but would you like it in your back garden? It's been reported that if Fastlane was attacked, the radiation would wipe out the whole of Scotland, and not touch England. So I actually understand why people up north, that's true, I understand people up north, why they're uncomfortable about it. But I agree that it has to stay there, unfortunately.
Yeah, what's you was disagreeing then, Nick?
Yeah, why are you disagreeing? Because that is an absolute fact.
I don't know if you've heard of something called wind. I don't mean that to be personal. But the wind could take the effects straight into the north of England. It could take them anywhere. And, of course, no one's doing it because they want to wipe out Scotland, for God's sake. That's absolutely ridiculous.
No, I said that if Fastlane was attacked, the whole of Scotland would be wiped out and England would not be touched.
So easy having 4 women around the table. Where's Greg Dyke when you want to be provocative? Can I just point out that if it was not for the nuclear programme, much of people in that area wouldn't have any work.
True. I think, how many, is it about 2,000?
I have absolutely no idea, but it's what
that's your argument for keeping Trident? Is it keep 15,000 people on the Clyde in work?
No, Michelle Dewberry is absolutely right, and I thought it was a very carefully and well-constructed introduction to the debate, because I absolutely agree with you. I wish we could live in a world where we don't need them. And I bet Theresa May, and I bet Michael Fallon, the Defence Secretary, Philip Hammond, I bet all of them,
feel the same way.
Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, would love to, but the reality is we don't live in that kind of world, unfortunately. And as we heard, without rehearsing all the debates that we heard in Parliament this week, there are rogue states, there are people trying to get nuclear weapons, there are countries such as North Korea. It is a sad fact of life at this time. We cannot possibly stand there with nothing to defend ourselves but the banks of the Coldstream Guards.
But all I said to you was that you can understand why people in Scotland are a bit angry about it, because it's in their back garden. And it is a fact, Nick, that if there was an attack, the radiation would wipe them all out and England would not be touched. So you can understand why Scottish people are upset about it. But it has to be somewhere.
Can we just move this on slightly in the sense of, you've both gone over those points for a moment, but also the fact that the bigger thing that concerns me, and I agree, basically, Trident is an insurance in a mad world that nobody wants to take out, but everybody has taken out.
True.
But what I would say is this. As someone who has people in my family who are part of the military, very proud to be part of the military, is we aren't in a situation at the moment where I feel like we have a foreign policy, where I actually understand that we are investing in our military, where I understand what we are doing as defence for this country. That is actually a slightly bigger issue because it's a deterrent. That's the last stop. What are we doing over here to make sure we never get to the last stop? And that's where I think we can actually have a bit more concern and hold our government to account to understand what's going on. Yes, there's been a commitment to 2% of GDP to be spent on the military, but you talk to anybody in the military, the morale is terrible. The amount of people in the military is actually coming towards an all-time low. They're struggling to recruit people to come into it. The reservists are also at an all-time low. Yes, it's an insurance, but what are you doing on the front lines? You know, I think it's very interesting. George Osborne didn't waste any time getting on the Speaker's circuit. Yes, he's got nothing else to do. But one of the first things he said in a very, I'm sure, high-ticket invitation that he spoke somewhere and charged lots of money for, he said the biggest regret when he was in government was that
intervene in Syria.
They didn't intervene in Syria. Yep. There was a vote against that. And I think that's a fascinating thing.
Hold on, we've got to get back to Trident, Emma. And you made an important point, which was that defence spending is capped at 2% of GDP. And if we maintain Trident for the next 30 years, we're going to spend £204 billion on it. Is this money well spent, given it's a deterrent that most people don't really want or we don't really need and will never be used? And I'm using the words of Crispin Blunt, who made a very good speech against maintaining Trident, the only Tory MP to vote against it, I think. Not to mention all your Scottish SNP
Don't
MPs,
say my Scottish SNPs.
No. Your Scottish brothers and sisters, none of whom want Trident on their soil. And the point made there was, if no MPs in Scotland want Trident, a so-called deterrent that's going to keep our country so supposedly safe could be the cause of the breakup of the Union. Great result.
So
and you're soaking up an incredible amount of money. So what I'm saying is, and I've said it before on another programme, it's and I think I said willy-waving anachronism, and I got into terrible trouble. It is an anachronism. It's past its sell-by date. I think that we should lead the way in getting other countries to de-escalate their nuclear weapons rather than spend so much money on building up our capability.
If everyone did it, that would be the perfect world. But we don't live in a perfect world. And as I said, it's a necessary evil that we have to have. Unfortunately, we have to have it.
But Rachel, if we did what you're saying and we lead the way, so I think, there's over 15,000 nuclear weapons at the moment. Russia have got over 8,000. If we then sit there and go, right, everybody, we're going to be the nice guys and we're going to disarm on our own, do you honestly think that Putin's going to go, oh, yeah, good point, I'll do the same as you?
We can't second-guess what the rogue states are going to do, or the uncontrolled dictators. But around this table, if you were Theresa May and you were asked the question, would you press the button and kill maybe hundreds of thousands of people, would you all do so?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, but you have to.
You would?
Yeah, sure.
You would? If it's there, you have to be willing to press that button. Because if you want to do what Jeremy Corbyn...
She just said yes, didn't she?
Yes.
One word.
And I respected her for that.
It was an amazing moment.
It was brilliant.
I mean, I was like, Theresa.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
That was the arrival.
It was a brilliant
That was her Margaret Thatcher moment, wasn't it?
But then you have someone like a Corbyn who will say, no matter what happens, I won't press the button. It's ridiculous. I just think, what are you talking about? We've got £31 billion it's going to cost to renew these submarines. You have to be then willing to say, if needs must, and of course no one wants those needs to must, but if they do, I will hit that button.
I thought Theresa May's Thatcher moment was the reminder of anyone when she became Lady Bracknell and lowered her voice and just glared at Corbyn. That was it for me. Question, if we go down your route, what goes in its place? Nothing at all.
Well, other countries have got a spread of different sorts of defence mechanisms. We have put all our eggs in Trident's basket. Well, I'd like to see us build up the military. That's what we actually needed in Syria.
I'm all for Emma's point.
I mean, the
but if you've got a nuclear weapon flying at you, how's it going to help when you've got 2 more regiments and a nice aircraft
OK, so
carrier?
we just all blitz each other and then we just destroy the world.
It's, as Emma said, it's this ridiculous situation where neither of us fires.
I think it's important to remember how the UK got nuclear weapons in the first place. When Harold Macmillan met JFK in the 60s and had signed what was seen as a landmark deal between America and Britain so that basically the Yanks would sell us, as it was then, Polaris. When we got that, it was a world that had just come out of the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was a world where we were very much reminded of the balance of powers between countries. And I don't think anything's changed. I think the way that we live now, sadly, means that we're always in a balance. And I think even more with terrorism, we are now facing all the time blind attacks, which we will.
We've got to wrap this bit up. And as far as I'm concerned, CND should have been called Labradors and Mummies Against the Bomb, and I'm with them. Now, not for the first time over the last few months, I want to ask, what would Winston say? Everyone's saying it. The world is crazy right now. A lone wolf massacres innocents on a seafront in Nice. Hundreds die in an aborted coup in Turkey. Shootings in the US, and that's only in the past week. Everyone's feeling it. There's something horrible in the air this year. As we go into the Olympics, the joy and pride and spirit of London 2012 seems far away and long ago. Instead of moaning, why is everything so awful and I've done it, try this. Regard terrorist atrocities, such as the one by an apparently self-radicalised loon in Nice, or mass shootings by yet more nutjobs in the US, as random catastrophes. They're like plane crashes. It's a waste of time worrying about them. No government can prevent them. They're not failures of leadership. They're accidents of nature. And next, stop going online and freaking out. Twitter won't stop terrorism, tweeps. If Churchill saw us now, he would be turning in his grave at our pathetic reaction to events. Let's not allow it to be the summer of hate. Keep buggering on, everyone, as Winston would say.
Well, I sincerely hope I've misunderstood you, because are you actually suggesting that with a series of random shootings of innocent police officers in the US, we just ignore it and carry on?
No, and what I'm saying is
carry on?
We've got to be more selective about what we worry about. We cannot predict, and no government can stop, the sort of random lone wolf act of violence. There's always going to be crazy nutters out there.
Hang on a second. Are you honestly suggesting, after those 84 people were killed when they were mown down by some mad bloke on in a truck on Nice, we just sort
like
of,
a plane crash.
84 people died in Nice, and on we go, and here's the weather?
I'm afraid... I'm not saying we don't worry about it or we don't mourn them and grieve for 84 lives lost by some religious hitman. But this is not something that governments can necessarily do very much about. And I think what I'm saying is, because of rolling news and because everybody's a citizen journalist and there's so much content out there, we're living in a 24-hour culture that's saturated with bad news at the moment. Right. And I think it's making everybody anxious and unnecessarily gloomy and fretful.
I'm not gloomy.
And I'm saying, let's tune it out. Let's try and sort out what things that we can worry about with
Rachel,
legitimacy and with purpose, and things that we can't control.
But don't you think the anxiety is caused by the catastrophes and not the other way around? We are all on edge.
I'm not saying our anxiety causes plane crashes. No, I'm saying that we can't... There's no point in getting on a plane and spending the whole time worrying about it crashing.
Do you know what? That's a really dumb example, Rachel Johnson, because tragically, just over a year ago it was, a pilot for an airline decided to fly the plane.
He was a kamikaze. This is exactly my point.
As a result of that, every airline in the Western world, I don't know about the whole world, and in the US, now has a situation where one pilot is not allowed to stay in the cockpit all the time. There are different disciplines, his or her own, just to make sure that Emma's here. The pilot is not to stay under his or her own, and there has to be a change of personnel. You do that as a result of what's happened. Governments impose anti-terror legislation, or whatever it might be, as a result of what's happened in Nice. Clearly, the pedestrianisation of that area did not work. So the next time they have fetes or parties, whatever you want to call them, they will lock down that area.
It's going to be like the American embassy.
You have to learn from these. This idea, we can't do anything about it. Well, let's all just have 9/11.
Sorry, Nick, can
Come on, Nick.
Rachel,
no, I agree with Nick.
Okay. I don't agree with Nick. You really think that because we had 9/11, now we all have to take off our belts and shoes every single time we go through?
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Rachel,
I don't.
You're doing yourself a disservice in your arguments. Because I understand what you're saying to a point. I do agree that governments and people in charge react to things and modify the way that we behave to try and protect against. Hence why you saw people in France who've been subject to some of the most brutal attacks in a short space of time, screaming murderer at their elected officials because they want more done. But put that to one side for just one moment. What I understand to be the case, I've just been off, that's why I've not been on this programme for 3 weeks. I've been away.
There are other reasons, by the way.
Whatever. You've been told different things to me then. And while we were away, my husband has several news apps on his phone, and they all do a breaking news alert sound, and he's become a one-man news machine. Yeah. Right? I was the one who went into news, and now he will say to me, "Did you hear?"
And is he in a state of nervous tension and anxiety?
He's not in a state
of living with her.
He's not. Yeah, I'll accept that. No,
so but the press has got a big part in all this.
What I'm trying to say is, when the internet went as it went with news, and news went global, and also news went 24-hour, and I say this sitting on a 24-hour news station, the irony has not escaped me. We went into a situation where I thought I'd get a larger spread of news from a larger spread of places, and actually the news agenda would become much more fragmented, and people like us would have to pick from a much larger menu about what we spoke about. But something interesting has shifted. We've gone to one story agenda. In the last few years. No. Something will come out as breaking news, and then it will dominate in a way that feels more pervasive for 24 hours because it's on your phone, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's on the radio.
And it moves faster.
And it stays with you. No, but also news moves slower because it goes incrementally.
But can I just go back to something?
It moves faster, I'm saying, because of social media and everything else.
So I think it's your false illusion that you're in it the whole time.
OK, yeah, so we live in the 24-hour news cycle, but before, Michelle, I just want to say something about what you said.
Go on.
we should have protection. We should be, the public should be protected. Now, look, if you just look at Nice, this was one guy in a lorry who was ploughing into a crowd. Now, we're always going to want to have crowds of people. So are we now saying that just in case one lunatic decides to get into a car and plough into a crowd of people, we have to protect the crowd of people from that eventuality?
I think
that is absolutely
Rachel,
that
is
is
big
nonsense,
events like that.
Nick.
Sadly, we're going to have to do that.
Life is a series of risks.
It's very interesting. We are speaking on the day. I can do this in a sentence. Europol has just published today, as we speak, the number of terrorist attacks that have happened on mainland Europe and the number that have been foiled. Both are at a record high over the last 5 years. That foiling, I would argue, is because the lessons have been learned, but they are able to take what goes wrong and act against it.
OK, so for me, I completely disagree with you. I think the days that we stop getting anxious and affected by these acts will be a very, very sad day, because let me tell you now, I am addicted to the news. But I'm absolutely addicted to the news. I have it on. You'd hate to live with me. It is relentless in my house. But what happens with me is when there is a mass shooting in the States, it doesn't even come onto my radar, because to me it's become commonplace. It just is what it is. It's what they do. Of course they're sad and of course they're tragic, but there's seemingly one every other day in America. Now, when something tragic happens, like your niece and all the rest of it, it stops me in my tracks. It makes me feel anxious. It makes me feel sad. It makes me feel afraid, and I am completely comfortable with that. I want to feel those emotions. It makes me feel empathetic.
But don't you see a terror attack in Nice? Is a terror attack in Tunisia? Is a terror attack in London?
I wouldn't even call it a terror attack. It was a lunatic.
It would appear he was inspired.
It's not even just about a terror attack. I'm talking about any tragedy. When something tragic happens, I want to feel those emotions to it, and I actually feel bad.
But don't you think a mass shooting in America is tragic?
No, I'm being. Of course, it's tragic. But what I'm saying is, it's lost that for me, because they happen all the time. All the time. It doesn't penetrate and have that same effect on me anymore.
Well, what I would say is, if we all feel that and we all go about our business differently because one person has perpetrated an act of such horror, I think he's won and we've lost. Anyway, it's what they want. And, you know, ISIS now designs its atrocities to get maximum media attention and in order to cause maximum anxiety in the West.
It's called the death of 1,000 cuts policy, isn't it? Because they can't, thank the Lord, it doesn't look like they can do a 9/11. It doesn't look like they can do a 7th of July in London. It doesn't look like they can... So what they do are these fairly... And totally impossible to guard against. How do you guard against a guy with a truck or a minibus or an SUV? So this will continue, because this is the only way the terrorists...
and we have to accept it. Now we've got to move on. Because now it's time for the First Ladies. So the Donald, can we still call him that, is the official Republican nominee for the President of the United States, which makes his third wife, Melania, the official nominee for First Lady. And oh boy, what a debut she made in her new role.
My parents impressed on me the values that you work hard for what you want in life.
Barack and I were raised with so many of the same values. Like, you work hard for what you want in life.
That your word is your bond, and you do what you say and keep your promise.
That your word is your bond, that you do what you say you're going to do.
The only limit to your achievements is the strength of your dreams and your willingness to work for them.
The only limit to the height of your achievements is the reach of your dreams and your willingness to work hard for them.
Yeah, Melania, she did really look sincere there, didn't she? She just looks like a lump of wood. I mean, that's
How can that happen? How can a scriptwriter literally take one and literally put it into this second speech without someone somewhere flagging it?
I think the scriptwriter's actually admitted, she's called something Meredith, somebody or other. She admitted she cribbed it
herself. She shouldn't.
The word my bond, no one even uses my bond. It's such a specific thing. And also, what it's done, sadly, is it's made Michelle Obama in some way
look brilliant.
Look brilliant. She was already brilliant, but also the idea that, you know, it's all these speeches you could just rewrite. It almost makes her seem less authentic.
Come on. Rachel, you write a column for one of the national newspapers.
It does reflect fragments of my thinking.
You've never lifted anything, you've never cheated, you've never copied, you've never block and tackled a load of copy.
No,
right, I'll take that as a yes.
I've definitely copied my previous columns.
Yeah, right,
okay. I call it recycling.
You write regularly. You've never lifted copy. You've never lifted.
Never.
You've never cheated in an exam.
Like that.
Leant over someone's shoulder.
It's a serious job.
You've never done that. You've never copied someone's work at school.
The girl at school used to write, and what I used to do, she used to look at my answers, and what I used to do is I used to write an answer in pencil, then she'd copy it in pen, and then I'd rub it out and write the correct one.
What I want to know is who wrote Michelle Obama's original speech.
I think
that's a good story. Okay, we need to find that out.
All I want to say is I have a dream.
From the ridiculous to the even more ridiculous, how on earth is Corbyn still the leader of the Labour Party?
Did you think this will ever win? Well, look at me. I'm coming back again. I got a taste of power and a clear mandate. And if you want to know why I'm still standing, you just fade away. Don't you know I'm still standing better than I ever did? Looking like a real survivor, got an automatic leadership bid. Therefore, I'm still standing. No, I won't resign. I'll be picking up the pieces of my party around you on my mind. I'm still standing. Yeah. I'm still standing.
Whoever made that video just there, Jeremy, that needs an award.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Brilliant.
But that guy, my goodness, does he have a pair of...
To be fair to him, he's sticking. He's got his principles, and he is not letting go, you know?
Well, the last man standing on this panel is obviously Nick Ferrari.
Thank you very much.
That's it. Send any of us a tweet if you've got something you want us to debate on the show. More straight talking next week.
So now we know Donald Trump is going to be the Republican candidate in the presidential elections in the United States. Donald Trump. He could even become the president. God save us all.
Hi, it's me. I will be back next week on the show. Very excited for a bit of straight talking with the rest of the pledgers. I am not going to wear my gaffer tape. Going to be gobbier than ever. So for those of you on social media who've been telling me to shut my mouth, it's not happening.
Provocative. Straight talking. Fairness. Provocative. Straight talking.